Okay, so the program we're going to be using today is called Lightroom. And you may or may not get this when you open it. You might just open it all the way. Lightroom works on creating a catalog. So what that means is it creates a file that is telling your catalog where all the photos are that's in your catalog, what you've done to those photos, and what you want to do with them later on, and all your preferences and everything. By default, a lot of times, any program that creates a catalog, they've already created a default catalog on the computer itself. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure it's on our external hard drives. So I'm going to walk you through. I'll just say use default for right now. But once I'm in here, the first thing I want to do to make sure I create a catalog on my external hard drive, I want to come up to the File menu, and I'm going to go New Catalog. And now that's going to allow me to create a catalog somewhere else. So I'm going to go and navigate to my external hard drive into a folder that I've created for this. So inside your photo projects folder, you can create a catalog. This is about organization, just knowing where it is. So I'm going to create it inside the same folder for right now where my photos are. You can also just have this on your hard drive, on an external hard drive, and then import full pictures can be in different locations. It doesn't have to be always on the same drive the way it works, but if you're going to be taking your hard drive going from place to place, you definitely want them on the same hard drive, and if they're in the same folder, it makes it even easier to keep organized. So I'm going to give this a name. Now, if I was doing this for like a client project, I'd be naming it for the project that I'm working on. Usually, if I'm doing it for an event, I give it the date first and then the name of the event. So it would be 2018-02-12, because that's today's date, and then the name of the event. That way, when I'm looking for things, it's easier to know where everything is because it's in chronological order. So it's going to close and reopen again real quick. So now I've created a new catalog. Now, because you already have your stuff on your external hard drive, this next step I'm going to do, or just show you real quick, you don't have to do right now, but in the scenario where you're just taking the card right out of your camera and you're plugging it into the computer and you want to get everything from that to your hard drive. So I had you just drag it over and put it into your hard drive for now because that was the easiest thing to do without showing the program. When you're in the program, what a lot of people do is you come down here to the bottom left where it has import, and because it sees that there is a external device, see, it knows there's a drive plugged into it or a memory card. It's latching onto that and it's going through, it's showing you a preview of all the pictures that are there. And on the right side here, this is actually allowing me to choose where I want that to go, so I can navigate to where I want it. And what's really cool about this for professional use is that I can actually, right here you see it says make a second copy to somewhere else. So in that scenario, what that's for is, all right, I'm a professional, I can't lose these things. I need to make sure I have a backup somewhere. So I have two hard drives plugged into my computer. Plug my SD card in. I have my what I call my working hard drive where I do all my edits on, and my archival hard drive. And I tell it to go to both locations at the same time. So instead of copying to one and copying to the other, the program actually puts it in both locations at once. So that way, God forbid, I lose this hard drive, it breaks, something happens to it, I still have the photos backed up somewhere else. So that's very helpful for that. I'm going to cancel real quick because what I'm going to do now is just get to the scenario where you are currently at. I'm going to eject this flash drive. You see I don't have that devices area. It doesn't see there's anything plugged in. It's just showing the internal and the external hard drive. So when I click on the external hard drive, you see it twirls down and shows me the list of all the folders in there. I'm going to go to the folder that all my photos are in. And once I click on that folder, you see what happens. It picks up all those photos. So I actually have a lot of photos in here. These are ones I took for the assignment. These are ones that were on here before. So everyone get to this point right here. And you can see now too, everything has a little checkbox on it. So right now everything is checked. That means everything's going to import. I could uncheck them all and then just decide on the ones I need to import. I could check all. So I can choose what to and what not to import. I can probably also do uncheck a bunch of them at once. So I'm just importing the ones I need to for my particular assignment. So I don't need all the ones of my kid on here because that's not the assignment. So I'm not going to check those right now. I'm just going to check the ones that's relative to what we're doing. So once that's done, I'm not worried about anything on the right side now. Again, this is where if we had the SD card in, I'd have to tell it where to go. Because they're already on the hard drive, they're not physically going to move anywhere. They're already here. I'm just adding them to the project. You can see out on top here it says, add photos to catalog without moving them. If you wanted to move them somewhere else, you can change it to move, copy, or copy as a different file type. So once I have them selected, all you have to do is on the bottom right, there's a little import button there. Click import. Give it a moment. Now this program has a lot of great features. The first thing you'll see is on the right side here, I have these different info things. If I scroll down metadata, it shows me all the information about the photo, you know, the name of the file, and down here, when I took it, the dimensions, my exposure, so I took it at 1/80th of a second at f2.8, my focal length on the lens, what my ISO setting was, if I used the flash or not, the make and model of the camera, make and model of the lens. If your camera is GPS enabled, it'll give you that information as well. So it has a lot of stuff in there. And then you can actually even change that. So I know some people that when they do this stuff and they're going to author this to give it to somebody else, they add to the metadata like their professional name. So you can add your company name to the file. So that way if someone else steals it later on, your name is still part of that file, and it's helpful for copyright issues and things like that. And even right up top here, you can still see here's the ISO, my focal length, my aperture, my shutter speed, and your color spectrum range. So how much blue and yellow and green and red are in the photo and where they are. So from this point, what I want to do right now is I want to go to on top here where I have library, develop, map, etc., etc. Click on develop, because now I can see them much larger. And as I go through, you should see the doors start to get in focus in the background. And that's your aperture range. And it's only very little movement. I did have it on a tripod, but it was a wobbly tripod. Now what's cool with this is here it is, it's fine, but if I want to make the photo a little bit better, you can adjust settings to your photo at this point. So this is where this program excels, is on the right side here, you have all these different tools. And say your white balance was off. You know, right now white balance, this WB is white balance is as shot. I can click that drop down, I can change it to auto, daylight, cloudy, shady, tungsten, fluorescent, flash, custom. You know, say it's a daylight, you can see the color changes on my photo. Or I could say it was taken with a flash under fluorescent lights. Put it back to auto. Or you also have this right here. This is a little eyedropper. If you grab this eyedropper, this is saying a white balance based in the camera. So you find a piece that's white inside the photo and click on it, and it'll re-white balance to whatever is white in the photo. And you know, if I have a series of these, because I have like 10 of these photos, I can sit on one and then copy that to all of them. So that way I'm not going through one at a time readjusting it. I can adjust it to all of them. Same thing down here. You have other things that you can adjust, your exposure and your contrast. So maybe it is a little dark. You can always increase your exposure a little bit. to brighten it back up again. You can increase your contrast to give it, this is a more flat feel or a little bit more rich feel. Reset those back to 0. Down here we have highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. This will, anything that's highlighted where it's bright, if I increase that, it just makes it brighter. Or I can maybe dip down the highlights so it's not much as a focus, and then this part where I took the photo, it's a little dark, so I can increase the shadows and bring out the detail in the shadows. See, that looks a lot better now than it did originally, because now what you're focused on, the subject, which is this microphone stand, originally, yeah, it's there, but this other part of the screen is much brighter, so it's drawing your attention away. When I decrease that and I increase the part I want to focus on, now it draws the attention back to the focal point of the picture, which is, in this case, the microphone stand. Same thing with what the whites and black are. Is anything that's on the white part of the spectrum, like the papers and stuff, you can make those brighter or darker as well. And anything that's on the darker part of the spectrum, like the stand itself, you can make those darker as well. So these are some just really simple adjustments that you can make to your photos in post-production that will, you can take a good photo and make it a great photo. A lot of the photos that you see, magazines and photo shoots and things like that, they all go through this process. There's very few photos, #NoFilter, where it's a photographer takes a picture and gives it right to the client. I don't know a single photographer that I've ever worked with that'll take a picture that they're getting paid for, takes a bunch of pictures and just hands it over without touching them up afterwards. Most of the style and what you could call a photographer's signature is their post-production work and manipulating it and bringing out the parts of the photo they want to bring out. Another thing we can do with this is, the framing on this, I didn't really follow the rule of thirds. This is kind of in the center. It'd be nicer if maybe it was to the right a little bit. You can still rearrange the layout of the photo by cropping it as well. So this right here, you see this little square or rectangle really with the lines going through it. That looks like the rule of thirds. If you click on that, you get the lines across the photo here, and now you can grab the edges and readjust your layout. Now you gotta be careful. You see, if I just click it and drag it like this, I'm also changing the aspect ratio. So I can make it a thin photo, I can make it a wide photo, but if I want, maybe I want that aspect ratio. If I want to maintain an aspect ratio, and this is true in Photoshop as well, I have to hold the Shift key down, and now I'm locked into that rectangular shape that it started as. It's just getting smaller or bigger. And I can change the size, and I can still move the photo within that size once I get it there. And then all I have to do to set that, okay, maybe that's good, that's where I want it. Then I just hit the return key and it sets it. And you can always, any of these things, you can see down here in my little timeline here, this is the first photo we're working on. It shows we did stuff. It shows I changed the exposure on here, and I changed the, I cropped it a little bit. And you can always get rid of these as well. So anything that we're doing, it's all digital, which means I can always undo any of it. I don't have to keep what it is. I can always go back to the original photo. So this is non-destructive editing. Non-destructive is great because we're not destroying that original thing. In fact, you can see here on the left here, I have a history. So it's showing me every single thing I've done so far to this photo. And I can go all the way back to, when I imported it and did nothing to it. So you have that ability. So I can very easily go through one at a time. And if you're doing a series of photos, so like this one, this is a series where they're in order and they're all pretty good. Although I did have one in the middle here where it's a little blurry because I did it with my finger and it's like at 3-second shutter speed. And I did one with the timer after that. you can go through and do ratings on all your pictures. So I can be like, oh, this is a 4, it's a 5 scale rating, and I get to like this one that I don't like over here, and I'll give it a 1 because it's not very good. And that way later on, if I'm going through 1,000 photos, I can give them all ratings, and then afterwards I can filter down. I just want to see 4s and aboves, and that way everything that's 3 and below gets hidden from my view. I'm not deleting it. I'm just not looking at it anymore. So when I'm doing editing, if I'm editing an event and I have 1,500 photos, I don't want to edit every single photo. I want to go through and just find the photos I want to edit. So I'll go through and rate them all first, filter them down, and then just edit the ones that remain. So of that 1,500, I may end up with just 600 that I'm going to work with, and just go through and edit those ones. I'm going to hop back to library for a second here, because so here it is. Like I can say, see right here it says filters. This is where I can go. All right, let's show my rated. I want to see 4s and above. It's only going to show me those 2 because those are the only ones I rated so far. What's really helpful with that? Oh, let me shut my filters off for a second. Filters off. Okay. So let me give all these a 4 real quick. So now I know what I'm going to use for my aperture assignment. Now I didn't go through. I probably would touch all these up and make them look prettier. But I want to show you is now I have these. I want to put these into just one folder or collection, they call it. So that way now I can start organizing. I have my aperture, I have my slow shutter speed, my fast shutter speed. Then I can export them individually. So I have them to work with as different groups. So on the left here, first of all, you'll see catalog. Right now we're on the previous import. By default, when you import something, it just shows you the last thing you imported. I could be on all photographs. So say you kept importing stuff into here and it's only showing the most recent, that's why. So you'd have to adjust it to make sure you're seeing everything. Down here, this is the folder that we're in. But under here, collections, this is what I want to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new collection. I'm just going to call this aperture. So it's for the aperture assignment. I guess I could have done that first. Hold on. I'm going to select the photos I want to use first. So one way to select a bunch of photos, if you click on the first one and then the last one, hold shift down and then click, it'll select all those photos. The reason why I want to select them first is because now when I go to create collection, you'll see here it has an option for include selected photos. So I'm selecting the photos I want first, then I'm creating the collection, and then I'm going to spell aperture correctly. Aperture. And then when I hit create, I now have a little collections folder over here with all my aperture photos in it. And I can always remove stuff from here, like, oh, maybe I don't want that one, but it doesn't delete it. I hit delete, it still exists, I'm just removing it from that collection. Because now at this point, once they're in here, now it's easy to say, all right, I can still go through and develop these, I can go back to develop, edit them some more. Once I'm done, this is the next step where I want to get them out of here and onto my website. Now, depending on how you took your photos, whether you use the RAW or just JPEG, at this point it doesn't matter, but if you use RAW you cannot upload to your website. It's going to be too big, the website's going to say no thank you, it has to be a JPEG file. So from this point here, I'm going to do an edit select all. So I've selected my entire collection. And then I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to the Export menu. And when it brings this up, now see a lot of options, don't get overwhelmed. Just start with the first thing. Where am I going to put it? Always think about where you're putting it first. So I'm exporting to a specific folder. I always choose that one. I don't want to use like the same folder as originals or anything. And because I'm choosing that, I have to go and I have to choose where I'm going to put it. So in my media production folder, I'll just create a new folder that says aperture. Okay, honestly, I always do this. I do an exports folder, then inside the exports folder, I put the individual ones. The reason why I like having a folder just for exports, then I know where to go when I'm looking for my final stuff, not hunting around for it. Every project I do has an export folder. Then I hit choose. There's a couple of different options you could play around with. Don't be afraid to experiment with this stuff and figure it out. Honestly, a lot of this software stuff and like the settings, when it's a lot of things like this, there's no one right way to do it. And sometimes it just takes, hey, you know what, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, and see what the different results are and find out what your workflow and what you feel most comfortable doing is. But as long as you know where it's going and then scroll down to the file settings, so I know it's going to be a JPEG, and that's it. I don't want to resize it or anything like that. All this other stuff's going to stay the same. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit export. It should only take a moment. Here's the progress bar on the top left. So it took a moment because I had to convert it, but now I can see here's my files over here. Now one thing I didn't do, I should have showed you, in that export setting, you can also rename the files as you're exporting them. So by default, it has the name of whatever the camera named it. But at this point, you can come in the file naming area and rename it. I can say custom name with a sequence. So you can say, this is my aperture photos. I did sequence, that way I'll go aperture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is. So that way, if I want to make sure they're in a certain order, this is how I do it. I'm doing it for a client. I'm doing it, I did photos for Stephanie. I'm going to do Stephanie 1 through 100 because I did 100 photos for her. If it's too much grainy, you can actually change how sharp the image is or how soft the image is with the detailing. You can do some noise reduction. So I don't know, can you tell? You can't really tell on the projector, but like because this is at 3200 ISO, which is kind of high, like up here, see how it's grainy? See all this graininess? If I come down here where the noise reduction is, and I increase the luminance on that, see what happens to the grain? So that's original. That's with the correction. So you have the tools of like, oh, well, I had to use high ISO, but I can take some of that away in post-production. Now, depends on what it is. You don't want to overdo that because some things might get worse. If you're doing people's faces and you turn that on, it might make them look weird now. So you have to be careful of what you're using it for. Okay, now once I have it exported, this is how we get it onto the website. So what you want to do first, you're going to drag a title over for your aperture. And then the way you're going to get your photos on the website is you're going to use this gallery one. So don't use a single image or a slideshow. I want you to use a gallery. So I'm going to bring that over. And once I click on it, it's going to say, upload files from your computer, or you can just drag them here. I'm going to choose clicking on the thing. Go to my photos. Make sure I select them all. And hit open. It's going to upload those photos. Now this is why it's important that you make sure they're in order when you're doing it, because it's going to put them in the order that they are in the folder. So it is kind of helpful if you rename them based on the project and put them in order so they get the 1, 2, 3, 4 behind them, so that way they're in order when you upload them. So now that they're uploaded, you can always add more images to it. And I think, yeah, you can reorder them once they're in here as well. but just easier if they're already correct once they're here. Some things you can also do with your galleries is you can change how many columns there are. 3 by 3. If you're doing 9 photos, 3 by 3 columns is pretty nice because it looks good. You can change the spacing. So maybe they're a little. That's the top and bottom spacing. I watch. How much space is between the image? You can make them less space between them, more space. Give them thin borders if you want. I kind of like no borders. Once you're done, I hit publish now. The reason why I like the gallery is now when you look at the gallery, all right, it doesn't look great right now because they all look like the same. But when you click on the first photo, it blows it up to full size. And then you can go through them one at a time. When you upload like on Weebly, if you just put a regular image or a slideshow, you can't bring them full screen like this. So as trying to show off your work, you want to use the gallery feature so that way, oh, that looks like a great photo, and people try to click on it, they can't. You want them to be able to click on it, make it bigger, so they can see everything. So again, all I want to do is repeat this step again. I'll do my fast shutter speed. Bring your title down. Bring your gallery down. Again, I could do it the other way. I could find the folder first. And drag them in.